Today's episode, we're talking to one of our internal recruiters where his full-time job within our company is to just place our remote closing students with remote closing positions.
I maintain relationships. I focus on interviewing reps, getting down their notes to actually send over to our clients. I list off like their niches that they're interested in, what they're looking for, get any gauge of past experience, see how their mock calls are, things like that.
And he went really in depth on some of the tips and tricks on what to do and more importantly, what not to do on your interviews.
I'd say the biggest red flag is like giving very vague answers, not being able to elaborate on your experience. That's why I say preparation is key. Lying is another huge one. Saying like, oh yeah, I've been a closer for like 7 years. And then I ask you like, well, what's your close rate? 20 to 50%. Wait a minute. That's a big range, man.
And he also talks about some of his success stories through some of the RCA clients that he's managing.
She's like my number one success story. I love her to death. She ended up interviewing with a company. It was helping parents on how to like teach their children with ADHD. She wasn't the top pick on the group interview. They were going to extend an offer to another candidate, but she went about following up. Personalized email, followed up relentlessly, and she got accepted into that position as a setter.
All that coming up in today's episode of the podcast.
First off, dude, how's the week going?
Going great. It's going great. Placing reps, having fun, doing interviews, all that fun stuff. You know how it is.
There we go. So just before we jump into the regular scheduling programming of what we talk about here is I want to add some context. So up to this point, we were actually talking about this before we clicked record. Up to this point, you guys have heard from appointment setters, closers. That's the deal that we usually do here. But Luke is actually a part of our recruiting team that is an entirely separate like entity of the business essentially. And their sole purpose is to make sure that anybody that we work with can find an opportunity that it fits their goals, their desires, what they're looking to reach. So we're going to break down all of that, how the infrastructure works, the internals of everything, because I think it's a really big part that sets us apart from really anybody. So that being said, dude, we already got to like how you're doing, but so let's like go back like a couple years. I don't know your full story. That's why we're here. So how did you get started into the whole like remote closing space, setting, high ticket industry?
Wow, man, you're taking me way back here. I feel like I'm old. I feel like I'm aging a little bit. But no, I've been in the space now going on for about 4 to 5 years. You know, I feel a little bit old. Like I said, I got started in this space. I like found an Instagram ad, I believe. And like I got hit with like this YouTube video and I was working at Chipotle. And I just like actually watched the full length ad. I didn't click skip. And then I bought a course from like a different company like way back in the day. And then that just kickstarted my journey of like actually like walking out on like my job at Chipotle and then starting off in the high ticket space like a month and a half later. And yeah, man, that's kind of how I got my start. And I got started with like a really great company right off the bat too. It was awesome.
Nice. So what was that just for context? So what was that course about? Like what did you buy into?
Yeah. I had bought into this one, like it was like a very elementary, like $99 like course. I just kind of like taught the basics of sales. I got into like a Facebook group with other people to network in, things along those lines. It was a great course, you know, like don't get me wrong. I actually ended up working for that company in like my first like real opportunity. And from there, like that kind of started me off in this whole like sales journey that I like am now in recruiting with too, with doing recruiting for, you know, sales reps. And yeah, that's really like kind of like just the basics. Like we're taking back like a while. I haven't thought about it in some time, but it's been like a crazy journey, especially at that start, man.
Yeah.
So
you went from Chipotle and then just going directly into like a high ticket sales position. Were you a setter, closer? Like what did that look like?
Oh yeah. So let's give some context on that too. So I basically had an opportunity. My first opportunity actually wasn't with a great company. Let's actually backtrack there. So I worked with this one company that was like very elementary and startup. Like there was this dude in the Air Force that was running it and like wasn't really in it part-time as like a business owner for like a marketing team with like e-commerce and things along those lines. And I was a closer for them. I would take like maybe 5 sales calls a week. They were just looking for someone very new, kind of like starting off, like very green opportunity. And I, you know, after some time, I was kind of like, it was about like the 3-week mark, 4-week mark. And I was like, like, I ended up talking to them. There was like another business owner that was also trying to like get me to his team that they were working with. It was just some weird stuff. So I ended up just leaving due to like those ethical reasons. And then I got in with Traffic and Funnels, which was another like huge company, like way back in the day in the space that was like Traffic and Funnels sales mentor. And then I started off as an appointment setter for them and like my first like real opportunity. And then that was great. I ended up making like 3,300 in my first 2 weeks, which was like the most I've ever seen at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was like 19 and I had that money and I was like, whoa, like I just had to talk to people for a living. This is so easy, you know? Like I had 15-minute conversations, made sure people showed up, and then closers just kind of went to town, you know? So yeah, that's how I got like my start, man. It was like selling mentorship programs, similar to that we're doing in like RCA right now. And yeah, that leads me here with like this phenomenal team of like these absolute savages that we're working with now.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason for these like more, I mean, I don't want to call it elementary questions, but like kind of like the beginning of your journey is keeping in mind that a lot of people that listen to this are people that are like, they don't even know what remote closing is. And they're like just getting started, or, you know, they're trying to get placed. So that's why, you know, I'm sticking a lot on those. On that note, can you like think of any like major like learning lessons or things that you learned in like those first couple companies that you would like tell your you know, your future self, be like, hey, don't make these mistakes or things like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, there was like 2 stages in my career where I think I learned the most. The number one, like being that start, that first month and a half where I didn't have the commission check coming in. I just walked out of my job with like a blind sense of faith out there. And I was like, I'm going to find an opportunity, you know, like I think that like that first stage of my career, and then I hit a career down slope that we can kind of like touch on too. Like when I was like halfway through, about like 2 years into the game, so to say. But like that first, I would say like a first month and a half before I found traffic and funnels and like that team, and I'd worked that e-commerce opportunity. I think the biggest learning lessons there that like I actually showed up really well. I networked with people. I got into like the good Facebook groups. I started posting like valued content where it's like, hey, like if you're interviewing, like, you know, be sure to ask questions, things along those lines. I would say to anyone that's starting off in the space, especially, make sure that you're asking like pretty high level questions to businesses to get an understanding of like where they're at, you know, because like the company I went from where I was like that closer and like very green, very entry level, they didn't have the right systems and processes in play to be like successful long term. However, the next company I went with, Traffic and Funnels, like I mentioned, they had a sales team of like 15 setters, 10 closers, 2 companies. Like there was the B2B end, there was the B2C end, like different caliber of opportunity, night and day, you know? And I was able to like ask the right questions in that interview process to understand like, what am I walking into? You know, because you got to know what you're walking into with an opportunity. You got to make sure like, hey, like this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm walking into, all that fun stuff. I would recommend like before you interview with companies, probably know what you're looking for out of the space, you know, because some companies are different. They have different requirements, things along those lines, part-time opportunities versus full-time. But I would say like the biggest learning lesson for me was like just coming prepared and getting out there and getting to know people. I did it really well, but I probably could have done it even better. And if I would have done it even better, it could have set me up for like maybe even more success, you know, when I was like that early on in my career and getting in with those companies and growing my career, like from like basically nothing to something with like where we're at now. And it's great. You know, like I would just say like networking, meeting people, don't be afraid to like, you know, just hit someone on Facebook and just make them smile. I think networking is just one of those like, key things when you're starting out. That way you can get to know other people. You can pick their perspectives in the space. And usually people in this space are very friendly. You know, if you make them smile, you can have like long lasting relationships. I still got guys in my Facebook inbox from like 4 years ago. And they're amazing, man. Like there's some great people in this space. So I just say like networking is like that big key thing. And that, especially like that early on in like your career when you're just getting into it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the, you know, the age old saying of like, it's not what you know, but who you know. And I think it's super true, right? Like so many people that I've had on this podcast, when we're talking about like, how did you get your opportunity? It's like, well, I talked to this guy that introduced me to this person and I created a relationship with that person. And then they knew of an offer that was looking for a closer and hey, I'm a closer. Right. And a lot of times those opportunities they just don't exist unless you like put yourself out there and like you said, make people smile, have just genuine human interactions with other people. And that's where some of the best ones come, you know?
Absolutely, man. If you can just like, if you can maintain relationships, that's always something. Because like you don't need to blow up someone like every day too. Like don't get me wrong, like that's not how you maintain a relationship, but like having like a good amount of healthy space. Because like at the end of the day, like we're all focused on like getting after it, making money, having fun in the space, and like doing well in sales. And then touching point on like the second, like when I had a career downslope, because I was living with my parents at the time, and I was working at TNF and I was doing well, I was making good money, but I wanted to move back out to Seattle, and their requirement was like, hey, you got to move to Nashville. And it's like, I didn't want to do that after a certain point. You know, like Seattle was like my big home base. It's where like, you know, I have all my friends. It's beautiful scenery. Middle of Iowa doesn't really have much, you know, it's just corn and cows. So I had moved out to Seattle. I had quit with that company. I had another offer on the table with like a different company with marketing. Where I messed up there is that I had banked on that opportunity and I'd put all my chips in one basket before having like a finalized contract and like a start date.
Yeah.
If I would have played it smart, I would have like probably been in that position for at least a month, 2 months to like earn some income, be able to actually get familiar with their sales cycle, do well before moving out to Seattle, because like, once again, like my expenses basically tripled overnight, and I didn't do that. Like, I was just in the interview process, you know, like there wasn't a contract on the table. I'd start like driving out to Seattle. Once I get past the mountain ranges in Montana, it started snowing and I almost crashed. And so I took that as a sign, like, I got to just go to Seattle. By the time I had passed those mountain ranges, I had gotten a text like, hey, like, we're actually not going to move forward with you. So I was sleeping on my friend's floor for about a good 2 months, just setting appointments and dialing with like 2 different companies and took this career downslope to eventually getting into my next opportunity with a really great company with over the 7th level. And, you know, like that team I learned so much from, man. So much. Great team for sure.
Yeah. I think I think a lot of people could take away from just that conversation, or you just your whole experience, is like you've kind of jumped into different opportunities, and from what it sounds like, you've learned something from every single one of those. So I think a big like hesitation for some people is like, well, what if this offer doesn't work, or what if like I have to leave or whatever. And it's like, you can't really look at it that way. You got to look at it more as like, these are just like, they're different opportunities. Each one is you're going to use as like a stepping stone. You're going to learn different things from each one. And ultimately, you know, you land upon the one that you stay at a little bit more long-term. Right. And, you know, I think for both of us, it's like, I don't think I'd ever want to leave this company. You know what I mean? But, you know, what does it look like 10, 15 years down the road? It's like, you can learn so much from this, or from any opportunity, to then bring on to your next adventure, you know?
100%. You can even like, and I always recommend in like the interview process, I think is going to set the pace, like for any opportunity. That's why I recommend when I'm walking through next steps with reps and I'm like, you know, doing these interviews and I'm like connecting with people in RCA and like in our network, it's like, gotta ask questions, gotta know what you're walking into, you know? Cause like if you can, the first 30 days I see with an opportunity is typically what's going to dictate the pace for like the next like 3 months with the opportunity. And then at the 3-month mark, that 3rd month, that's what's going to dictate the pace for like the 6 months with the opportunity, then the 6 months to the year, and then the year to the 2 years, all that. That's how I like to look at it. And you can really flush out like if you're getting into the right opportunity or not through the questions that you ask in interviews. And I think that's really important. And also where you're hunting for opportunities too. Because, you know, like there's opportunities on Facebook. Some of them are phenomenal. You know, I've gotten some of my best opportunities from Facebook, the relationships I have there, because it's a very social platform. There's a lot of high ticket groups, but you got to be able to ask, like, you know, the companies the right questions. Like, hey, are there closers on the team? Are they making money? Okay, well, like if there's no other closers, you're the first one. Well, like, do you have marketing systems in place? Oh, wait, you do. That's great. That's a green flag. They're increasing marketing spend. They have a proven offer. It's been in business for this amount of time. Okay, like I can move forward with that, but they don't have a sales team. The offer's really only been alive for 3 months. And it's like, you know, you could be walking into a possible risk. So it's like you can kind of assess that through the interview process to know if you are walking into the right opportunity. Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you can learn more from getting into the right opportunity rather than getting into the wrong opportunity, you know? Because like when I worked at Traffic and Funnels, I learned how to work. Those guys work, man. I would wake up at 4 a.m, hit the gym. I would come back. I would dial from like 8 a.m. to the sales meeting. Then I would work from like after the sales meeting to like midnight. Not midnight, but like 8 p.m., you know? And then I would just go hit the hay. Because like I was, once again, young male in society. I'm just going to focus on my work, focus on my money. And then when I went to Sales Sniper, it's like, okay, well, like how can I like communicate professionally? How can I grow in these aspects? Then with closers, I've learned so many lessons. It's even hard to pinpoint one, you know?
Yeah, dude. Same. Like I can, you know, I could probably talk for 4 hours just on like the things that I've learned from Cole and the team and just everyone on here. So I think I do want to circle back here more towards the end about like the interviewing and questions to ask, because I think we can get really tangible on that stuff. But let's take it from, you know, if we go back in the story, is so you leave the one opportunity. I guess how did you get out of sleeping on the couch and into working with a closer?
Yeah, so I had a good friend in the space who was also a recruiter at the time too. He's no longer in recruiting. He's a sales director, phenomenal guy. I won't name names that way no one blows him up, you know. But I had him give me just some really good advice, because I was kind of spinning my wheels with 2 opportunities that like were just there. And like one was like Australian based, another one was like US based. So I was working like 12 hours a day and just trying to like, you know, make ends meet and do well. And like both companies really didn't have any systems, but I was just so headstrong on making this work, because I'm a stubborn Norwegian, man. You know, that's my thing. I come from a Norwegian household. we're stubborn. We're stubborn Scandinavians. And he just like, I got him on a call. This friend of mine, and he's like, dude, like, you should just look to get money in your pocket right now. Because like you're sleeping on your friend's floor, you're just on the cusp of getting an apartment. You know, like you could do really well with the two opportunities. However, like I would personally recommend you to other companies that I know are going to hire within the next month or two, and you get into a stable company. I was like, okay, so like, what should I do now? And he gave me a good piece of advice where it was like, I think like Mark Cuban said that if he went broke like tomorrow, he would start off as a bartender at night and work sales in the morning and like a commission only sales role. And he told me that, and I was like, okay, sweet. So what can I look for out there? He's like, well, probably leave the two opportunities because both of them, you got them off Facebook and like you didn't do your vetting, you know? So that was a big thing that I messed up there. So I ended up working at Mattress Firm, and like, I won't lie, man, like Mattress Firm, I don't know what they do. The commission structure is crazy. You can make good money. You can make like I made like $5K my first month over there. And I just talked to people about their like mattresses.
Shut it
like,
down.
what?
Go sell mattresses.
Yeah. It's like when you're down bad, just go to a Mattress Firm. They're always hiring. Like no joke. I kid you not. Phenomenal. Like they'll pay you hourly, and then like if you pass a certain point in commission, they'll pay you the commission. It's a crazy company. So I was with them for about 3 months in this time, and I was making good money. But I know like long term I wanted to be in this space because I'm just so passionate about it. Like I put so much time, I put so much effort. Like I was sleeping on my friend's floor. Like all these things like really amounted, and then I just waited for the right opportunity for myself. I got clear on that. I journaled about it. I knew what I was looking for out there. I wanted to be able to do certain things in my life. I couldn't do that at Mattress Firm, you know? So when I was looking at new opportunities, I really made sure to do my due diligence and like, what are the top companies I want to go for? That top company, it was like a pretty big one in the space. I was like, man, 7th level communication sales sniper, you know, good training, good sales team, real savages. I want to get in with that team. I got presented an offer from them to be like a DM setter. And I was like, yes. And I remember in my interview, like, because I was still working at Mattress Firm in Seattle, and I finally had gotten my own apartment. They had asked me, like, you know, like, I know, like DM setters don't make them much, like, you know, like at that time in their career journey and all that. DM setters don't make much. Like, what's your expenses right now? And I straight up told them on the interview, it's like, in 2 weeks, I will be back at home with my mom, in Iowa. Like, I will drop everything to like cut expenses and make this work. I told that to them. They offered me the very next day. Within 2 weeks, I was driving halfway across the country, set up in my mom's basement, just doing DM setting and then getting to triage calls, ended up closing my first couple deals. And I was like, then I hit that groove.
Nice.
It was great, man. It was great. But yeah, dude, like that, like that was just a key piece for me in my career. I needed to take a step back to be like, okay, like, let's see things logically. And some people get so headstrong that like if anyone's gonna get headstrong, it's me, man. I do powerlifting, I do jiu-jitsu. When I'm committed to something, I'm committed to something, you know. So like I was just so headstrong that I couldn't see like, you know, things weren't working and we're doing the definition of insanity. So let's actually like recalculate, regroup, and then come up with a different game plan for what we actually want, because we're really not making progress with like working 2 jobs and 12 hours a day and all that fun stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it takes that, you know, I think a lot of people would have looked at like had like ego in that position and been like, oh, like I'm gonna like go through this and I'm gonna like, you know, make it work in, you know, in your example, Seattle. But you're kind of just like you said, just like drop the ego, understand like I need to survive. I need to take this, and this step. And, you know, hindsight is 2020, and it looks like, you know, everything kind of culminated into obviously a part of the journey where we are today, you know?
Absolutely. And people just like, I think if people just kind of game plan with what they're looking for out there, it will serve them tremendously more, because then they have a roadmap. You know, if you can create a roadmap, a game plan, like, yo, like sometimes people shouldn't start full time with positions. I'm a firm believer in that. Sometimes it's just like, if you're going to interview with a company and they're requiring full time, but like you got all these things going on right now in life and you can't commit full time, that's okay. Sometimes in the pipeline, like I have those conversations with people and it's like, hey, I'm really looking for a part-time job. And I'm like, yeah, no worries. Here are some resources here. Here's how we can game plan that. Connect with your coach, because everyone in RCA has their own personal coach where they can get that one-on-one attention to be able to build that game plan, you know? And sometimes like just life circumstances happen and you got to be able to take that step back and realize like, yo, I'm down bad right now, man. You know, you guys got to sit back and just be like, you know, like sit on the beach, whatever you got to do, and just be like, okay, like what do I want? How can I actually change this? Because at the end of the day, like you have control of those things, like your life, your trajectory, what you're gonna do. You have control over like how you're gonna go about that. Sometimes there's life circumstances though that you don't have control over, so you just got to work around it a little bit. And that's what I just ran into, as stubborn as I was.
Yeah. Cool. So what was the transition from that and then into transitioning off that offer and then working with us?
Yeah. So I transitioned from Sniper over here actually on like pretty good terms as well. Like I've sent them like a few reps. And they're a great company. Like don't get me wrong, great company. I love what they do. They do some interesting stuff. But I just wanted to like kind of achieve like new career roles for myself as well too. So when I came over here, funny enough, a close friend of mine also referred me over here. And I interviewed with like, I believe one of our former recruiting coordinators, someone that's in my position currently. They were on the team, like they're off doing teaching now. They're really happy with life. You know, they're doing great. They just want different things. But I'd interviewed with her and she was like, hey, like, you know, I think you could be like an internal setter for us. And I was like, I would love that. You know, I would absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So I interviewed for it, and funny enough, the setting manager with RCA, he had DM'd me like 2 years before this. It was like 2 years or a year before this, and he was like trying to like get me into RCA as well too. And he was like, you know, going back and forth with me on DMs about it. And so I hop on the group interview for the, you know, RCA setting position. And I had recognized the face. I was like, wait a minute, I got a Facebook connect with this guy. So like we go through the interview, and then after the interview, I just sent him a nice message like, hey man, it's great to see you like achieving career goals and really growing over there with Cole's team. And then like right after that, I got put in a group chat with the head of internal hiring and then Matei. And then they were like, yo, you're going straight to a one-on-one interview, man.
Let's go. Before we move forward, I just want to like, you know, full circle that back. It's like, yeah, just from you connecting with people over the years, like it's from what it sounds like, every single one of the opportunities that you've been able to land have been from like you knowing somebody or somebody knowing you or having a mutual connection and like you kind of bringing that up. And it's like, you know, I think a lot of people just like beat their head against the wall and they're like, I've sent out like 500 DMs and I've sent the same script over and over. And it's like, but like, how many personal connections have you made? Like how many like actual relationships have you built? And I think, you know, with you, it's like, I feel like some people listening to this and be like, this guy's like landing all the gigs. Like what's going on?
Yeah. It's like working for three industry kings, so to say. But no, like I would even say to that, because I can even touch on like personalized follow-up tips at the end of
sure, yeah.
Like the with my first position that I landed, the one that was in Nashville, like with that consultancy, it's funny enough, like I had provided value. So like all my positions post that were mainly from the relationships I built in the industry, but you got to be able to provide value sometimes. And in that group, because once again, like I bought a training course and there was a Facebook group with a lot of people. Sometimes the people in the group, they don't have the best intentions. They want to sell you their own services, things along those lines, their own sales training. And there was this like huge agency that was like trying to poach people, get them to pay for like some really like shady stuff. And I had brought it to the attention of the admins, and I actually direct emailed them, and they had me actually hop on an interview with like their head of like client success about the whole thing. And I actually kind of like brought some good educational points around like, hey, like, you know, look out for people that reach out with these types of opportunities, because they may try to pitch you into a course and they may say like, hey, this is a job interview, but really we're going to sell you into the sales training program. And there's like this MLM kind of thing going on. And I'd done an interview with them about that. And then like the very next day, like their head of internal hiring actually reached out to me after I did that interview. So also providing value is another great way to like foster those relationships too. There's tons of tactics you can use out there, so to say, but you want to, I shouldn't use that word tactics. You want to like actually have relationships and provide value. You know, you want to be personal. You want to be a human with these people, because we're in the people business, man. You got to be a person. Send a meme every once in a while. Don't be afraid to crack a smile, you know?
Yeah. And I think even more important than that too is, you know, if we're looking at, let's say, you know, 2 or 3 years ago in this whole like remote closing appointment setting space, is I think you probably could get away with, you know, just sending a couple DMs and you'll be good. But now, because there just is, I mean, as there's more and more people that know about it, there is just more competition. There's some pretty savage closers and setters out there. So, you know, being able to, as cliche as it is, right, differentiate yourself from what other people are doing And if that differentiation literally is just like a video message or a voice message or mentioning something on their profile, or, you know, just whatever it is, just going that little extra step to differentiate yourself from
100%.
everyone else.
And there are some savage setters and closers out there. There's some guys I interview where they got like so much experience. I'm like what? Like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. Even like former RCA students, I went through RCA like back in 2021. I've gotten them up for update calls to bring them up to speed with like how the pipeline works. And they each tell me like, yo, the changes you guys have made are crazy. And I just look at them straight in the face. I'm like, dude, the changes you made from your first profile to the one I'm about to update and send to clients is also crazy. You know, like,
yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
so-
dude, there's a lot out there.
So what was that transition? So you jump on, you're on the team, you're a DM setter now for actually, funnily enough, in Cole and my DMs on Instagram. So what was that process like, and what were some, like, you know, some learning lessons in that space?
So when I originally hopped in, I was at DM setting position. Matei had offered it to me on my birthday, and I was like, man, let's go. And I was like, can I book closers that I owe my background on Facebook? He's like, not yet. But no, so I started off in DM setting, and you know, I was on there for maybe like 2 weeks. I wasn't on there long, and then they were just like, hey, let's get you on calls, which like low key I was like very thankful for, because like I do not operate well in DMs. I just don't like it that much. So I start doing calls. I go through like about a month and a half of doing calls on the team for setting. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the conversations I had. I started hitting like this flow. I got like 5 closes. I had like this insane like close rate one week where I put up like 15 sets, but I had like 5 closes. And like a lot of my people were showing up, and I was like, whoa, I'm like hitting my groove right now. It's gonna be a good month. But in the back of my mind, like there was a recruiting position that opened up. It was like for a pipeline manager. And our current head of recruitment, our former head of recruitment, was like really a cool person. The recruiting team was kind of something I didn't want to get into. I was like, man, like this looks like kind of like a good segue for me personally. Cause like I had done sales for like a good amount of time with like these past opportunities. I was like, okay, well, like what am I looking for now? And I kind of felt like I would be more fulfilled in that type of role. Because as a pipeline manager, I was like fostering relationships. I was connecting with reps. I was making sure to hear them out. I was making sure that they were like prepared for interviews with clients, things along those lines. It was a great position. You know, I just like called people like all day, and I would just like book interviews for like update calls with people. And then on top of that, I would also oversee like RCA people that were having problems, where I'd connect with them and be like, hey, like here's some further coaching around like your interview stuff. Just want to make sure you got this before your group interview tomorrow. It was a great position. And so that caught my eye. And then I had a conversation with Matei, and I was like, man, this is really hard, but I feel like I would do really good in this. And he's like, dude, go for it. You know, he encouraged me to do it. And Jacob Combs did as well. Cause it was like, keep in mind, man, like I was in the space for like 4 years as like a rep. I was like, man, like, you know, this feels like a passing of the torch, parting of the ways. Like, I don't know what it was, but it was just like, man, this is crazy. This is a career shift. And I'm glad I took it. And then at the first of the year, we ended up getting rid of the pipeline manager position. I moved into a recruiting coordinating position where I was just taking interviews. And I didn't start off the best, you know, like I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to grow up on too. Don't get me wrong. But then like I had this massive growth, like after I put together like a plan with my direct manager on like how to improve like certain things about my performance. And then after going through that, you know, now it's just been night and day, and I'm kind of like the guy that holds down everything on my end of things.
Hey, what's going on? Aaron just popping in to the episode really quickly. So at this point, you've already listened half of this episode, so I'm assuming that you're at least somewhat interested in remote closing and how you can learn a little bit more about it. So I put together a free training. You can go ahead and click the link down in the description or in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Click that link. Don't go watch it yet, because we still have another half of the episode here of the success story of RCA. And just open it up, and just so you don't forget that you can go check out that video. It's going to go over not only what remote closing is, but also the 4-step process of what I would do if I was starting from scratch, starting over to still see a success online using remote closing. So that being said, let's jump back into the episode. Click the link down below. We'll see you on the other side.
That's such a cool story to hear. And, you know, one thing I just want people to take away from this too, because we were talking about it before we started recording, is, you know, when we look at this high ticket space, there's just so much more opportunity in these companies than setters and closers, right? And, you know, don't get me wrong, like setters and closers, like, you know, you're commission based, you have like an uncapped, you know, income potential to an extent. But with that comes a lot of stress, right? There's a lot of like, you got to hit projection. And, you know, obviously with other positions, you also have to hit projections and you know, hit numbers and things like that. But I just want to open people's minds that there's just so much more than that, right? So I think on our company meeting earlier today, there was like 112 people, I think is what it capped at. I'd say only about 12 of those, maybe 15 are in the sales department, like setters and closers. So we're looking at 100 other opportunities and full-time positions in these, in these companies. And that's like, we're just one company out of the hundreds, if not thousands of companies. So again, if you're listening to this, like if you start as a setter or a closer, and here's the caveat, if you're good at what you do, more importantly, if you're a culture fit, if you put down your head and work and show that like you are like you want to be a part of that company, you're not just going to get let go. You're going to be there. Like the people that are like looking over you, supervisor or whatever, is like, hey, where else can we put you within the company, right? Where do you fit, especially if you are a culture fit? So want people to take that away. If you could, because I have a lot of questions on just like the recruiting side and breaking that down.
Absolutely.
Could you maybe like paint a picture of like what the whole recruiting side looks like? So I know there's AMs, conversation between the AMs and RAMs. There's people higher up. Like, to be honest, this is more from my own education too, but just like kind of like a visual, try to paint that picture for us.
All you need to know is that we bring the energy on every company meeting. That's all you need to know. That's what we specialize in. So let's look at it like this. At our heart, we're a business consultancy. All right, we help businesses scale. We get the right people in place for that as well too, which we'll dive in on. But we also teach the basics, like, hey, how to support a sales rep, marketing solutions, simplistic sales processes to actually scale, because simplicity scales at the end of the day. So with that, there's the account managers that walk through that client journey, similar to how like client success managers walk through that journey with RCA students, except for businesses is what the account managers do. Now, when a business is like, they pass like certain requirements to be able to recruit from us, that's when they'll have like a recruiting prep call with a recruiting account manager, where they're just specialized in finding the right talent, getting them hooked up with someone that's going to like be there long-term, really envision the company values, things along those lines, and making sure that they find the right, like both culture fit, but also someone that can perform in the role and the requirements of that role. So that's what the recruiting account manager does. They hear out the business, they source candidates that are going to be that right fit for that business, and they handle like the transition and like sending notes, things like that. On my end, so there's the recruiting account managers, they just work with businesses. Then there's recruiting coordinators in recruiting. Those are the only two positions in recruiting right now. Recruiting coordinators like me, I maintain relationships. I focus on interviewing reps, getting down their notes to actually send over to our clients. I list off like their niches that they're interested in, what they're looking for. I get a good gauge of that, get any gauge of past experience. If they're in RCA and doing really well, I get their mock calls down, see how their mock calls are. It's like, okay, sweet. Like, are we looking at closing settings, things like that? Really, I make sure that like the reps are taken care of on my end, So I'm more rep focused. The recruiting account managers are more business focused. And that's really the basics of it. The really cool parts about being a recruiting coordinator is that like after a while, you get like really high business acumen, you interview enough reps. And then they'll be like, a rep will hop on an interview with me and be like, yo, for niches, I want like real estate, B2B, all these like super high earning positions. And I'm just like, hey man, here's the reality of it. You have no experience in real estate. And this is your first sales position. Probably don't want to go into a long, complicated process like B2B or real estate, because they're both very complex and they can take time to ramp up on. So you may not make the most money in the first month. However, I know that you were a personal trainer. I know you really resonate with health and wellness, and you're a huge Tony Robbins fan, and you've invested in yourself in the online space, and you've been actively out there. So I think business opportunity, personal development, health and wellness, and fitness are those top niches for you, because I feel like they're going to be able to give a good blend into an opportunity that's going to be a long-standing fit for you, where you can ramp up and do really well in. Would you say that you agree, or maybe not so much? And usually when I go through that spiel with people, they say, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So that's like that's the best part of my job, is like dropping the niche bomb, because like usually it's like always accurate. I love it. It's like I'm a professional at the end of the day,
Yeah, dude, that's funny. And because when you really break it down, just hearing that, it's like everything is sales, bro. Like that's why it's so important to just learn that as like a fundamental skill, because you almost like after they're in RCA, right? That sale is done, but now you have to sell them on the fact that like, hey, you don't really got a ton of experience. Like, let's go for something more, biz op, B2C, like you said, personal development, things like that. And I think it's just powerful to be able to like you said, almost understand their situation more than they do, with having like very minimal conversations, like kind of like you're reading their mind in a certain sense when they hop
No,
on.
it's fun. And some people just don't know what they don't know too. And that's okay. But I can provide further education with that and then steer them in the right direction. That's what sales is, I guess. But
Yeah. So understanding like your position, and so you're very, very focused on like the rep side. I mean, this is like anyone that's listening to this, like literally pull out a sheet of paper, because I'm just gonna like ask questions of exactly what someone needs to incorporate, like, and really to land like a really, a good offer for them. So what are like, if you had to bring us through like the initial like application of someone that wants to come into like the pipeline, for example, what does that usually look like, and recommendations that you would say for someone to show up in the best way?
Yeah. So let's focus on the basics first. Let's build like a solid foundation here. Show up well over a laptop, with like a clean shirt, like nice button up is good. If it's polo, I'm not going to like disagree with that either. Just have like a nice clean attire, show up well over a laptop, good lighting, like, the basics of all this fun stuff. I could probably get rid of the swords, but they're trophy swords, so I like keeping them up, So I'd say it's those basic things with like, okay, first off, showing up well. Second thing, preparation before the interview. You're probably going to get asked questions about your experience. Don't give like a 5-minute spiel about your experience. It's like, hey, like how long have you been in sales? Okay, you haven't been in sales. How long have you been in customer service? Cool. What does the day-to-day of that look like? You're probably going to get asked questions around those lines. So prepare beforehand was like just understanding, like, I'm going to ask you some basic screening questions to see like, okay, like sweet, what is your experience? What have you been doing in RCA? All that fun stuff. The fun part of my calls in particular is when I ask people like, what are you looking for out there? What type of team do you want to be a part of to really enjoy a new position? If you can envision that before the interview, I say with me, and give me a good thought out answer, we can knock out an interview in like 15 minutes. It's nothing crazy. And we can just dive into further coaching. I'd say the basics is just preparation. Because, if you take the time, and like I used to do this where when I was hitting that career downslope, when I was interviewing for new companies and I was going back in the market after working at a mattress firm, I wrote down some basic screening questions. I went to like a nice place in Washington where I could sit on the beach. I wrote down some basic screening questions that I would get asked in interviews, like greatest strengths, greatest weaknesses. Pen to paper, by the way, for this is power. I don't believe in Google Docs for this. Write down those basic screening questions. Now go through each one of those questions and think to yourself, what information is a business owner looking for me by asking this question? And then how can I best present the information that they're looking for? And then write down your response. Be honest and be yourself. Like, it's okay to get nervous, 100%, but like, if you prepare in that sense, you're going to come off with confidence and conviction. And at the end of the day, that's what gets you a job opportunity, is confidence and conviction in like what you're saying. Top of that, there's like very like micro things that some people need to work on, like interview cadence, things along those lines, not rambling. I ramble all the time sometimes, so I got to like check myself on that for interviews too. But there's some like micro points to it too. I would say like that's really the basics. If you just show up with preparation, good, clean setup, you're basically just fine on an interview with me. When you're actually getting to that tail end though, when like you're interviewing with a business, ask high level questions to the business owner, 100%. Like, would you mind if I actually shared my screen and showed you something?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'll walk through this in the next steps with people. We have a whole Google slideshow, by the way. It's really cool. Like I'll go through this with most people that are going into the pipeline. So when it comes to actually accepting an opportunity, kind of the two basics that we really go over in recruiting, and I'll walk through like this whole process with people
please,
in recruiting, but we'll just cover this one. When it comes to actually accepting a position, obviously being bought in to what they do for people is like a must. That's like the barrier of entry. Then also knowing the expectations within the role, like KPIs, hours, like how many hours are you working, what's your performance indicators? That's also another basic within the role when you're going to accept a position. Can you fulfill on the KPIs, and are you bought into it? Those are the two barriers of entry to actually like, accepting a position if it's presented to you. However, you don't just want to accept any position. You want to accept like the right position, and you don't want to get too hyper fixated because nothing's ever 100% in this life. However, I would, just to make sure that it's the right fit, I would probably ask questions around like, hey, what does the sales process look like? Am I doing like 3 setting call? Like, am I touching point with like leads 3 times before booking them? Do they need to be in the system for a certain amount of time? Kind of getting the nuances of like that offer and how their sales cycle works. I would get clarity on that. If it's around team dynamics, like, okay, ask like, okay, what type of team members are like a part of your guy, like a part of your guys' like company right now? Like who is the top performer? What does he look like in terms of intangibles? Is he really driven? Is he very supportive? Things along that nature. but also ask questions around the client journey. Like how many calendar bookings should you expect a week? Like if you're a closer, may want to ask that to a business for sure. Just those basic points of preparation are like pretty huge, I would say, to know whether or not it is the right opportunity. Because keep in mind, like you're in the interview process. If they want to, like, it's a fit for both parties. It's not just the business ask you and then they send you an offer and you just accept blindly. You want to know what you're going into, especially with these roles. Like the first month, it's going to be the worst month, more than likely. You're going to probably be learning a lot, especially with our team. Like we like to go over training, make sure you're really ready before like we start like taking calls and things along that nature. That process usually will take like 2 weeks. Typically, you'll still get exposure to the systems and the sales cycles, but you want to get clear with like what does that development plan look like within that company, I would say, for like most opportunities out there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, dude, that's so much good stuff that like, I mean, I've kind of touched on some of that with, obviously the other guests, but I mean, you're a much better person to ask of just like being in it, like literally grinding it every single day. And it's a huge point that, I've talked about multiple times is, when a lot of newer people are jumping on into offers, I think there is that excitement, right? Especially if it's like, they invest in RCA or 30DC and they're like, I need to like jump on this to like, recoup the investment and stuff like that. It's like, that's sometimes one of the worst decisions you can make, especially when, you don't have that back and forth with the company. And what I always try to remind people is, like you said, right, it is a two-way street. It's like they have their requirements, but you also have to like almost treat yourself as a business and also have your requirements of like, okay, I need to be able to get this amount of calls per day. There needs to be, proof of concept of another closer or another setter with, OTE that I'm trying to hit as well, right? There needs to be so many other things in place as opposed to just like jumping onto something blindly and then lose the month that you try to make it work.
And I'll say this too, like just for everyone like listening, like when I hit those 2 career downslopes, it's because I didn't do those steps in the interview process. When I got my first opportunity with that e-commerce marketing company, I didn't ask them like, hey, like I didn't do super high level questions. It was the first opportunity on the table. I got excited. I said, let's go. I was a young male. I'm going to make it work. Sometimes you need that. But then when I hit my career downslope, and I needed to take that break for myself because there was a mountain of things going on personally too. Like there was tons of outside factors. There was also those 2 opportunities that got presented to me and I accepted both. And I just accepted them blindly, not knowing like the systems, what they have in store, like what are they planning to grow to, things along those lines. And arguably like you got to know that, So if you do your due diligence, make sure it's the right fit for you and that company, more than likely you're going to enter into a prosperous relationship. If you don't do that, it's probably not going to be the most prosperous relationship known to man. And trust me, like you don't just want to be job hopping. You don't want to be one of those guys that's in the high ticket space for 3 years and every 3 months they got a new opportunity and they talk poorly about their past companies. It's like, you hop on an interview with me and you say that, it's like, dude, I'm going to challenge you on that all day. All day. I used to objection handle guys. Like, you will not be getting out of this interview without crying. I'm kidding. But
well, that comes back to the sales thing, bro. It's like it's sales everywhere, but it's a, it's a huge, it's a huge red flag for companies when, they ask about your experience and, if Luke says, hey, how many job offer or, how many offers have you been on? You're like, oh, 7. Oh, how long? In the last 3 months. It's like, well, hold on. Are we going to be number 8? Like, let's talk about that. Dude, that's funny. What would you say are like the 3, I mean, it doesn't have to be a number, arbitrary, but like a couple of things that you would say, like absolutely 100% do not do this on an interview with a client. Like just biggest red flags that you want to stay away from. I know there's probably more than that, but
oh, dude, there's a ton. Show up in the car, like show up on your phone. The first impressions matter at the end of the day. So your first impression, how you're showing up, is going to dictate what kind of goes forward in that interview process. So the basics, like showing up. I'd say the biggest red flags, like biggest no-nos, is also like just giving very vague answers, not being able to elaborate on your experience. That's why I say preparation is key. Because it's going to clear that up. You can be able to like tangibly say those things. Lying is another huge one. Like if you're just straight up lying to people saying like, oh yeah, I've been a closer for like the past like 7 years. And like I'm a total sales savage. And then I ask you like, well, what's your close rate? 20 to 50%. Wait a minute. That's a big range, man. That's like 50% of my company's marketing spend is about to go down the drain. So I say like straight up lying, don't do that. Showing up poorly, don't do that. And also like just taking an opportunity to interview that you're just really not interested in. Because you're not going to show up the best. You're probably going to like not really care that much. And, you know, like I'd say if it's like interviewing with a client, just show up well, speak well, attend the interview preps in RCA. Like we help you guys out with the pipeline. Do attend those. I hop in them every once in a while. And I like hopping in and helping you guys. But it's just like those basic things I'd say are the massive red flags. There's certain other things too, but you know, don't want to dive too much into the nitty gritty because we've seen a lot in recruiting, to say the least.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm sure that list just keeps growing. Last question here, and then, you know, we'll do a little bit of wrap up and some last questions, but, I think you did touch on this, and I think this is a huge question for a lot of people jumping in, is how do you approach answering the question of how much experience do you have? And they have literally no experience. Like, how do you usually coach people through that?
Yeah. Yeah, then like, let's say like they're an RCA, you know, and they're interviewing with one of our clients. Be honest, you know, like just be completely honest. Don't try to say like, oh yeah, like, you know, like I was in sales, but like, oh yeah, like it was like I was working at kiosk and certain things like that. Like just be honest. It's okay. You know, like you don't want to lie. You don't want to have a relationship that's built off lies. First off, those relationships will always fail in life. So I'd say when you get asked a question where it's like, hey, like, you know, what's your experience look like? It's like, well, like I've been in customer service dealing with high-end client issues in the financial sector for about the past 5 years. I've been like also on the phones with them to collect debts. Let's say theoretically I'm a debt collector, where I'm collecting about $1,000, $2,000 debts. Right now I'm the top ranking agent at my firm. However, I do want to shift into a more sales-focused role where I can really have more control of my income and be able to live the lifestyle that like I would like for me and my future family. You know, if you answer a question like that, like if you answer like that, like you're smart, you've prepared, you like have given basis to like, hey, like this is why I'm looking to transition into this industry. And like, here's my past experience that like is a little bit applicable, but maybe not the most. However, like I have a strong why behind me and I'm giving you some like meat on the bone to pick from as a business owner, you know? And obviously if you're in RCA, you probably want to get started on a pipeline opportunity. So prepare those questions as well too, because they're high level questions, but you just want to give like a basis of it as well. So, you know, I always think like giving a little bit of meat on the bone and, you know, just being upfront, honest, maybe playing into some attributes there, pretty important to say the least. Personally, like I never got hit with that question too many times because I was doing door-to-door sales from 14 to 18 for my own landscaping company. So
yeah,
put me on the spot there, man. I appreciate it.
You got it. You got hit pretty early on, and you getting past that sooner. So what's well, there was one, just to add like one little thing on that, you know, I think you even touched on it a little bit earlier too, is just the conviction and the confidence in which you answer questions, right? So it's like, you don't need to have the best, like, let's say you didn't even have, like, you weren't the top, you know, salesperson in a debt collection agency. Like, take whatever your experience is, attach a why to it, and then position it in a way that it is a benefit to them to hire you. And it's, you know, people have presented so many different scenarios to me. And like, for most of them, I can like, you know, move stuff around and make it seem good. Right. But sometimes it's just, you gotta, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be a numbers game for a lot of it. If you don't have experience and the companies are looking for a certain amount of experience, it's only a matter of time until you present yourself in a certain way to, you know, a certain amount of companies and they give you a shot. And that's, you know, that's all you need to get up and running.
Also some great RCA success stories too. There's actually,
yes, I was actually, dude, you took the question out of my mouth. Perfect. I was literally going to ask you, like, what are your like top couple like stories from people?
So there was I don't want to like name names too heavily, like, but at the same time, like, there was a mom I was dealing with. I'm gonna say a mother because like she was, when we had our first interview, she was expecting within about 3 weeks, and I was like, hey, like my sister just had twins. I know how crazy babies can get. Do you want to like possibly like put the pipeline on pause and we can like re-interview once things kind of get settled down a little bit? She agreed to that. So then we re-interviewed for the pipeline about 3 months later. And like when we at first hopped on, like she had like, it's just some things about the background just to kind of clean up a little bit. When she next hopped on, she had a great background. Like, you know, the kids were quiet. She had everything settled out in life. And she's like, yeah, I'm ready to dive into the space. So it was like a little bit of a late start in the pipeline, so to say, but she had personal things come up. And I'm always happy to connect with reps that have those personal situations that come up. And She's like my number one success story. I love her to death. She ended up interviewing with a company that was helping like children. It was helping parents on how to like teach their children with ADHD to actually be able to retain information in the classroom. This is a very high level company, really great team. And she knew like once she saw that opportunity, she wanted it. Okay. She wanted, I didn't have to give her like much coaching at all throughout like how to go about getting this position. That's how bad she wanted it. She wasn't the top pick too on the group interview. She was like the third pick in the batch. But she got moved to a one-on-one interview. And on that one-on-one interview, she did very well. And then post that one-on-one interview, like they were going to extend an offer to another candidate, but she went about following up, personalized email, followed up relentlessly. That one guy took a little bit too long to actually respond to the position. And he ended up just, I don't think he even like moved forward with it or anything to give like any context. And she got accepted into that position as a setter. And she loves the company. Her first about like 3 months in, I think like after like her 90 days, she got like a double in her base pay. So her base pay basically doubled. And then on top of that, she got flown out to an event that had like all these cool, like little like cartoon characters and monsters and like other kids running around with other parents. It was just phenomenal to see that on her Facebook story. So that's like my number one success. And then Sean Bray, if he's listening to this, I got two more for you, man. I got to tell you these. Sean Bray is another one. I interviewed this man. He was like, he did like online personal training for a little bit, but like he was mainly a personal trainer in person for about like 4 years. Jack dude, you know, like bodybuilder. That's what he loves. We had an interview on Friday, and there was this marketing opportunity that me and one of our recruiting account managers were really having some problems with. We were like, who's the right rep for this? Sean was that right rep. Sean was 100% that right rep to get into the setting position and do great with this company. So he gets in the pipeline on Friday. We ended up connecting them for like a group interview, like later that same Friday. He can't make the group interview time because he has work on such short notice. So we ended up just white gloving him for a one-on-one interview on Saturday. He accepts the one-on-one interview. He interviews for the position. They go about an hour and a half, you know, way over time, and he gets that position on Saturday. So within 24 hours in the pipeline, he got hired. And then he also passed his first 10K month as a setter. I heard just this last month because he's connected me also with his brother who's looking for a recruiting role too.
Let's go.
And then last one here too. There was another person who came through RCA who was a wedding photographer for about like 7 years. And she was getting into the program. She was doing well. And she was like really focused on appointment setting because like the coach had put in a development plan, like, hey, let's focus on appointment setting. Let's not look at closing because we don't have the most sales experience. And like, we could probably get into appointment setting, make more money, do well for ourselves and like do wedding photography on the weekends and make some side income. Well, within her getting in the pipeline, similar situation with the same recruiting account manager, 24 hours notice, there's a wedding photography lead generation op. And I'm like, I'm staffing for it. And I'm like, it's a closer position though. And I'm like, Steven, hear me out. I love you. You should put her on the group interview. Steven puts her on the group interview. It's like between her and another candidate going head back and forth, like on the group interview, they have 2 one-on-ones. The business is telling us like, I don't know who to hire. And then Steven's just like, you should hire Karen, you know, like she's going to do great. She's going to do amazing things. They have their last one-on-one. They go an hour and a half as well too. She really feels convicted by the company. And then in her first month, she was closing out like 50-40%. And I saw on her Facebook story, like I think like a month or two ago, she went to like Costa Rica and is just like living that like remote lifestyle, I think. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, those wins like make up for everything. You know, like every like problem that I've faced in recruiting, every point of like professional development that I've had to earn with like blood, sweat, and tears. Not blood, but working remote, man. Well, like sweat and tears, I guess. That those stories alone make up for it. And there's tons more coming in too. Trev recently got hired on with employment setting position as well. And I love that guy. He's an Irish savage. So if he's listening to this, shout out to him. I know he gave a huge line in the RCA group as well.
Dude, let's go. And yeah, on that same note, it's like, that's the exact reason I love doing this podcast, because I get to like hear these stories and listen to people and really understand like where they come from and their backgrounds and their struggles and things like that. So I know we're coming up at the top of the 30 minutes here. So dude, come up with like your biggest takeaway, or not biggest takeaway, biggest like golden nugget that you give to someone that is like listening to this. And I'll come back to you just to do this outro really quickly. So for those of you that are listening up to this point, we've talked a lot about recruiting and sales and all that kind of stuff. one thing I want you guys to take away is like, we are not just a sales recruiting company, or I'm sorry, a sales training company, but we have an entire, like, multiple people on the back end that are here to help you reach those goals. So if you want to learn more about remote closing, RCA, how we can help you along your journey, make sure to click the first link down in the description, a video that our founder Cole Gordon put together. And it basically goes over the 4-step process of how to get started with remote closing and appointment setting. And if it's something that you're interested in, obviously you can watch the training, check it out, and learn everything from there. Or we have a little bit more of an option to work one-on-one with us if you make it towards the end of that video. And but if not, it's all good. You can just take all that you can from that training. So that being said, what you got, man? Last takeaway.
Yeah, last biggest thing for you guys. If you're looking to get into a space where you can have massive value with companies, where you're really looking to grow in like your career and like be able to be put in like challenging situations that will result in like career growth, this space is like the perfect place to start. I started off in sales. I went to recruiting. Now I have like aspirations to be client facing and like B2B level accounts that like people at my age are just freshly getting out of college and they just don't have those opportunities right now. If you're looking to get into a space where you can have deep impact, earn a good amount of income, have career diversity, and be able to really play to the music and have fun, because a lot of companies in the space, they have fun. Don't be afraid. Learn more. Get out there. Network with people. Have fun within this process, because there's a lot out there. There's YouTube automation. There's tons of things. But if you want to be in the people business and you want to actually make a difference in people's lives, look into remote closing. Look into remote sales space. Look into the online industry and like the online education industry. And let's have some fun. I hope you go down the rabbit hole just like I did when I was freshly out of high school and walking out of Chipotle.
Let's go, man. All right. Thanks so much for jumping on. And thanks for you guys for listening. If you enjoyed, leave us a like, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. First link down in the description below as well, if you want to check out that training. Aaron here from the Remote Closing Academy. See you guys in the next one. Talk soon. Peace.